Deep in the isolated valleys of northwest Montana lies a dark legacy that a family spent generations trying to protect. For over a century, the final chief of the band kept his ultimate weapon hidden away where the outside world could never touch it. But sometimes secrets buried beneath the mountain granite are eventually unearthed. Welcome to the Purely Fiction Society. I'm Knowles, your host, and tonight we travel to the freezing ridges of Browning, Montana, to a hand-carved mountain tunnel hidden behind the pine trees, where an ancient power lies in wait. Join me as we follow Luke Barrow, a Native American artifact specialist who discovers that some family treasures carry a physical force that time cannot tame. This is Roaming Wolf and the Chief's Headdress. The heavy frost on the windshield made it hard to see the tree line. Luke Barrow shifted his old Ford truck into low gear, navigating a deeply rutted dirt path that gave way to raw mountain brush. He was deep in the isolated valleys of northwest Montana, bordering the Rocky Mountain front. Luke was born and raised right here in the area. His family owned a working horse ranch on the windswept plains just outside of Browning, a far cry from the massive wealthy corporate cattle empires people saw on television. Luke didn't fit the wealthy rancher's sun mold. He grew up cutting firewood, fixing broken tractors, and learning the antiquities trade from his father, a rough local woodsman and tracker. Instead of working for universities or private collectors, Luke ran his own independent recovery operation out of a small, cluttered office right in the town of Browning, taking on specialized cases for tribal preservation officers and local families looking to safely retrieve stolen heritage. At 6'2", Luke was of muscular build with a powerful frame, broad shoulders, and a presence that commanded a room the second he walked in. Yet he was ruggedly handsome. He had a quiet, deliberate way of moving that exuded pure confidence. His piercing ice blue eyes beneath a faded baseball cap were framed by thick, dark lashes. The specific hunt started a week ago, inside Luke's Browning office. Sam, a Blackfeet local and a longtime mutual friend who knew Luke's reputation for keeping his mouth shut and respecting tribal heritage, had brought Ben, known to his family as Roaming Wolf, to the office to talk in private. Ben was the great-great-grandson of the last living traditional chief of a local Blackfeet family band. Ben explained to them that when government agents were confiscating cultural artifacts in the 1800s, his ancestor refused to let the family's most powerful piece be taken. Knowing the government was taking control of the land that would become Glacier National Park and banning tribal access, the old chief deliberately avoided those peaks. He went out alone into the private family ridges further east, spent weeks chiseling a secret tunnel directly into the red stone mountain face by hand, and sealed the family headdress inside. Ben didn't have the coordinates or a map. Over 4 generations, the exact location had blurred into family memory. All Ben and Sam could give Luke during their meeting in town was a general 4-mile stretch of rugged timbered canyons and sharp rock slopes, completely separate from the national park lines. Because of his deep roots in Browning and his trust in Sam, Luke took the job. It took Luke 3 full days of footwork, examining the limestone ridges and checking for old tool marks on the stone before he found the entrance. It had been covered by a rockfall years ago, hidden behind a dense cluster of frozen pine high on a steep incline. It wasn't a cave. It was a tight, almost square hole, roughly 4 feet high and 4 feet wide. cleanly hand-chiseled, straight into the dark red granite of the mountain slope. Luke pulled his flashlight from his pack, clicked it on, and crawled into the low passage. The air inside the tunnel was thin and cold. The walls were straight, marked by the deep, uneven scores of old iron picks. Luke had to keep his head low as he moved deeper into the dark passage. After 30 yards, the hand-carved corridor ended in a small square room. Resting on a ledge, carved into the wall at the back of the chamber, was a crumbling fur pelt tied with old leather bindings. Luke stepped up and picked up the package. Inside, protected by another fur pelt, was the headdress. The vertical eagle feathers stood tall and rigid, completely preserved by the dry mountain cold. The headband itself was heavy, lined not with beads, but with a solid row of large timberwolf teeth stitched tightly into the dark leather base. The moment Luke looked down at it, a distinct sensation filled the tight space. The air pressure dropped instantly, heavy and dense, like the atmospheric shift right before a massive lightning strike. Before he could rewrap the headdress, the sound of boots scraping on the gravel came from the tunnel behind him. Luke turned around slowly on his knees. 2 men stood in the narrow entry of the chamber, cutting off his exit. They were local black market poachers who followed independent trackers to steal their finds. The man in front, a local thief named Victor, held a heavy shotgun leveled directly at Luke's chest. They must have seen Ben and Sam talking to him outside his office last week and overheard what they were discussing. Luke looked at the smooth hand-carved rock walls. There was no room to move, no cover, and men like Victor didn't leave witnesses out in the remote backwoods. Luke looked back at the package, remembering what Ben had told him about the old chief's warnings regarding the headdress's unnatural power, ultimate strength, ultimate speed. Luke didn't move to fight. Instead, he lifted the headdress and put it onto his head. The shift was instant and violent. The tunnel didn't change color, but Luke's senses magnified. He could suddenly hear the fast, heavy thrumming of the poacher's heartbeats across the room. A massive, aggressive rush of pure adrenaline surged through his veins, and every muscle in his body tightened with an unnatural, explosive reservoir of pure physical power. Victor was startled by Luke's sudden movement, and the shotgun fired. A deafening blast that filled the small stone room with smoke and shook dust from the ceiling. But Luke wasn't there. To Victor and his partner, Luke was a literal blur. His legs pushed off the granite floor with incredible speed, closing the 15-foot gap before Victor's finger even pulled the trigger, and gunshot smoke could spread through the air. Luke slammed into the first poacher, the sheer weight of the impact throwing the man hard against the chiseled wall. Luke grabbed the barrel of Victor's shotgun, and with his bare hand, and with a single effortless twist of his wrist, the thick steel barrel bent like soft lead, ruining the weapon completely. He threw Victor hard to the dirt floor, knocking the breath out of him. Victor scrambled backwards towards the narrow exit tunnel, his hands shaking violently as he looked up in pure terror, wondering what Luke was. Luke stood tall under the low timber supports of the room, the wolf teeth on his brow casting a long dark shadow across the floor. The unnatural power humming through him was heavy and demanding, but his mind remained entirely clear. His scowl conveyed his message. It was time for them to leave. Victor grabbed his groaning partner up by the jacket collar and dragged him to his feet. Then the two of them hightailed it out of there, through the hand-carved tunnel, running full speed down the snow-covered mountain slope. Luke stood alone in the silence of the stone room. Slowly he reached up and lifted the headdress from his head. The moment the leather broke contact with his skin, the rush died out. An incredible wave of physical fatigue hit his body all at once, making his knees buckle. He sat down heavily and leaned back against the cool rock wall, catching his breath as his heart rate slowly returned to normal. He looked at the eagle's feathers and the wolf teeth resting in his lap. This was a dangerous, incredible piece of family history. Left here, someone else would eventually find it and exploit it. Luke carefully placed the headdress back into its fur wrappings and tied it to his backpack. He had done the job that he had been hired for. Now it was time to get out of the mountains and return this power to Roaming Wolf, the rightful descendant who knew how to truly protect it. He picked up his flashlight and walked out of the hand-carved tunnel. He took the time to hide the entrance to the tunnel for history's sake, and slowly walked into the quiet Montana night. Thank you for listening to tonight's tale from the Purely Fiction Society. Luke Barrow risked his life to return the artifact to Ben, ensuring that its ultimate speed and strength remained protected rather than sold to the highest bidder. Would you have put the headdress on if you were cornered in that tunnel? And would you have let Victor and his partner run or turned them over to the law? Let me know your honest thoughts on this choice in the comments below. If his journey into the Montana mountains gripped you tonight, please hit the like button. And to ensure you never miss our next standalone adventure, make sure you are subscribed with notifications turned on. Until next time, keep believing in the stories. Good night.